Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening, and welcome to the April 23rd, 2009 Lowell Planning Board meeting. Tonight, we have a light agenda. The first matter on our agenda is the minutes from the April 6th meeting. The board members have any comments on the minutes from April 6th? The only comment I had is I know that that Aaron already took care of it for the location for the meeting, because our last meeting was across the hall, and by error he changed that. But besides that, that was the only correction I had. Any of the board members have any other corrections?
I had none.
None. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and approved, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, that April 6, 2009 minutes have been approved. Moving along on our agenda, we have under old business, 1519-1527 Middlesex Street. This was continued from our last meeting. The board will review proposed modifications made to the approval site plan at the address located above. The applicant is requesting the following modifications to be approved as a minor change to the approved plan: alteration of the landscaping island located at the entrance, replacing vertical granite curbing located in the parking lot with asphalt berm and concrete curbing along the pedestrian walkway. The board will also review modifications to mitigation plan agreed upon between the applicant and the common condominium trust. As you recall, at our last meeting, Attorney Elias was present, indicated he was working on a document to try to resolve the some issues that came up with the condominium trust, and the people from the condominium trust were present, and they spoke, and they were trying to get an agreement together with Attorney Elias, and they had a verbal commitment, but they were trying to go over some legal documents, and we requested we'll continue the matter to see if those matters have been approved, and if they have, we requested maybe that the conditions could be done in the future as a conditional approval. Saying then, we did receive a little communication by way of an email that's in our packet from Mr. Decker, who is a trustee at the Commons Condominium Trust. And having said that, I see Attorney Elias is here, so I'll turn it over to counsel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I think this is the first time I've had the pleasure of being before this board where I'm the only person in the room. It's quite astounding, but in any event, I have your total attention. I can see that now. I'm pleased to report that we have, in fact, completed all of the things that we were required to do under our agreement with the neighbors. As previously reported, I think we also have done all of the other things that the board had asked us to do. The only thing that's missing is some flowers that Mr. Naaman wants to put in the center strip where you enter in. He wants to do a regular planting there as opposed to trees and shrubs and bushes to dress it up. I've given you a copy of the agreement that I gave to the condo association that I had given to them 3 weeks ago, actually, and they got it to their attorney, Charles Perkins, who I think you're all familiar with, is certainly very familiar with condominium law, land law, etc., who's reviewed the agreement. He and I spoke Tuesday. He asked me to make a couple of changes, which I did. He indicated that they were going to just have a conference call, is what I was told, with the members. Yesterday this morning I received a phone call from Mr. Decker indicating that he wasn't sure that they were going to be able to do this. No, I have to back off and say it was in fact yesterday, the first one I said. Wasn't sure if they were going to be able to get this done, and perhaps I ought to ask for a continuance to the board and give a notice to the board secretary. When I spoke to Mr. Perkins, he indicated to me that he was pleased and satisfied with what I had given him, fixing those changes, so I saw no particular relevance to do it. I was told there was going to be a conference call at 3 o'clock this afternoon among these people, and I expected that I'd be told that everything was okay, or if it wasn't, that I would be told it wasn't. The only thing I got, and I gave the board as well a copy of an email I received from Mr. Decker at 314 that basically says they have it, they got the review from Attorney Perkins, and he will be in touch with me. Well, here we are hanging there. I have no reason to believe that we don't have an agreement, but I don't have a signed piece of paper. Not that I think necessarily that the signed piece of paper is crucial. I think the fact that we have an agreement would suffice. I also left a phone message for Mr. Decker indicating that I would in fact be here tonight, and I'm here saying that I think we've done everything we were asked to do, and I see no reason at this point for us to go any further on this. I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions the board has about it.
Sure, I have one or two comments. Since you brought up the fact about the flowers, that he's doing some landscaping there,
Right.
I went up there Monday, and the meters that are there to be screened, he put 2 small little bushes in, and it does not screen any one of the meters. You can see every single one of the meters. I mean, the bushes don't even cover 1 meter. And I know that was a condition of the approval, and it's in our bylaws that they have to screen the meters. And the concern is that the meters are right in the beginning of the building, and they're facing the street. So you have 6 to 8 meters, and none of them are screened. You have 2 small little bushes that do not screen any of the meters. And I know I just mentioned to you when you were here last time, and I knew you said they're working on the landscaping, and I was hoping that they would cover that. And I don't think it's a big issue, because I know it's an easy issue to fix.
Well, if I told the board that we'd put in 5 or 6 3-foot highs, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, so the main thing
If you
is-
want me to come back as a result of that...
No, I have no problem putting it on as conditional approval for the landscaping plan to be approved by Division of Planning and Development, which we do a lot of times, but in my opinion, those 2 little bushes do not screen anything.
I didn't see them, Mr.
Because
Chairman.
I saw every single one of the meters, and...
Yeah, I didn't see them.
Especially where it's facing the front of the street, and it's a busy street, and that's a condition of our subdivision, our site plan review, that they be
Sure.
screened. And I don't think it's something, if he's still working on flowers, it's something that they could address, you know?
Well, no one would plant right now. That's the problem. You just can't do it because they're all going to die, obviously,
You know,
and he wants to...
that's the discussion I had with planning and development is, sometimes on some of these issues, people put the screening in and it doesn't last a season. I know things that were planted at different sites in the fall didn't make it through the winter, and you're like, so how do we police that? But I think, you know, just the 2 of them doesn't cut the screening. I mean, if anybody else looked at them, I mean, when I drove by, obviously I could see every one of the meters, so it doesn't screen them. I know it's a condition in our site plan, as I said, that the meters be screened. I know we had an applicant in just a little while ago, and we really held them to the fire on that. We made them put in big tall trees, and their screening was on the side of the project and not facing the street. So that was just, I think that's something that can be rectified, but I'd like to see that rectified. Now, did we, I don't know if we made the conditional approval on the screening, or if we did it for the landscaping review. Do you recall offhand? If not, we can check the previous meetings. I know it's a condition of the site plan approval.
It's actually the condition of approval that was originally approved on the site plan. There's 4 conditions total. The 4th one addressed the screening of the utility meters.
Right.
So it directly discusses that particular item, not landscaping in general, but,
Right. So, I mean,
you know, so.
there's 2 little bushes there, but he's saying that was a condition that they be screened, and the 2 little bushes there now do not screen them, so.
So I should, at this point...
You have them screened?
Well, I just...
Yeah. I mean, if you look
I
at
understand,
yourself-
Mr. Chairman. That's why I said to
Yeah,
you, if
yeah.
I make the representation of the
Oh, I
board
understand. And
that those will happen,
Sure.
I think the board knows me well enough to make sure that I will make sure that that in fact will happen.
And I'm not holding this against you. I'm thinking that they had a landscaping plan, the bushes in to screen them. They partied it up and said, okay, we're gonna put these 2 bushes in to screen them. Bushes aren't big enough, they don't screen them. And like I said, we're pretty strict on the other applicant who came in when it came down to screening, because they didn't have it. And we made them that their bushes covered the top of every single one of those, and they only had 2 or 3 meters. And they ended up putting in 5 or 6 trees that were 5 to 6 feet tall. And these are 6 to 8 that are probably no higher than 2 feet, 3 feet top. Didn't, you know, I mean, you even see the bottom of the meter. It's not like it's a question of in the meter, you know, and they're not even, I mean, I don't know how long, I don't think they would ever grow to cover all the meters.
Maybe we could lower the meters
I think
instead,
it'd be
Mr.
cheaper to put
Chairman.
the bushes in. I've put bushes in the past myself, but I
I'll
don't
have to
change
look
meters.
at, I'll have to look at that.
I mean, I've done the
I understand.
landscaping, so I'm just saying.
I understand.
If they're doing the
Rest-
landscaping, you might want to just mention it to them that you were here and the board had a comment that that didn't adequately screen the meters. So that's all I have to say at this point. Now, may the board members have any comments?
I just had about the dumpster, did that actually get?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't,
Siding's up, dumpsters moved, everyone's happy.
yeah, that was a bit
Right.
sensitive issue. Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, in terms of the licensing agreement, I would have no problem moving this matter forward and making condition of approval the acceptance of this licensing agreement, and just have council forward the signed agreement once it is completed. That'd be my opinion, based upon the fact that it's been represented that council for the condo association has reviewed it, made some changes, and accepted it. I don't think that should be a problem.
Any further discussion with the motion? No? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 I think you need a second. I'll second
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry, I
Mr. Chairman.
apologize, thank you for that.
Yep.
Second on the motion?
Yeah, and I'll clarify too, just so we cover all the matters.
Yep.
The matters before us for a minor change to the approved plan for alteration of the landscape island located at the entrance, replacing the vertical granite curbing located in the parking lot with the asphalt berm, and concrete curbing along the pedestrian walkway. We've all seen those changes. I would make a motion that we accept those as a minor change to the approved plan. We'd ask that, as was discussed, that the meters be properly screened and that be approved by DPD, and that we accept the license agreement and have council forward a copy once it's signed.
Any further discussion on the advisement motion with those conditions
And
attached?
again, second that motion, that's,
Okay.
yep.
Motion made and
Excellent.
second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. So we have an agreement on the matter subject to those conditions.
I'm sorry.
We have an agreement on the matter subject to the conditions as outlined by Mr. Claremont, with the conditions would basically get the agreement back to us and the landscaping plan to be approved by Planning and Development, and hopefully that covers the screening.
Going to get the city to put a new sound system in, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think that's on the budget list at this point in time. I can speak louder, though. I was told I have an Irish whisper, so I'll keep that up.
Thank you all very much,
Thank you.
and I'll call you up when the trees are in, we'll go up and look at it.
I go up there quite a bit, so,
A picture.
plus we have some other development up there coming our way, so we'll be up there again soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Good night. Moving along, that covers old businesses, notices from abutting towns. We didn't have anything in our packages, and we have no ZBA notices this evening. Any general correspondence? I know, Aaron, we received a few by way of email, and I know you have a meeting tonight at 7.
Yeah, there's a couple issues of, actually, yes, tonight there's a meeting called the City Building Workshops, and this is a series of vision sessions that we're scheduling to build off the Hamilton Canal District. And they're targeted in the neighborhoods that directly abut the district. So downtown Jam area is tonight, and it actually started at 6:30 at the Lowell High School cafeteria. And then Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week, there's sessions, and I think it's the Acre, Lower Highlands, and Back Central, respectively. Those will be at 6:30. So you can make it. Anybody watching can make it. There's going to be two sessions in each neighborhood, and then capping it off with one final session with all neighborhoods together to kind of bring together the ideas and concepts together in one big comprehensive whole, finding ways to improve connections, improve economic business opportunities between the districts and neighborhoods, and that sort of thing. So that's going on tonight and will continue until early June. So that's happening. I do actually have a packet of notices from abutting towns if anybody on the board wants to take a look at them.
Was there any major concerns that you thought that had any impact on the city?
I did take a quick look, and there was nothing that directly was close to the city of Lowell that would really have any impacts on us. There was something from NEMCOG about the Hamilton Canal District. They have a environmental impact statement or a plan on file that's available for review. That's just a notice to the planning board members. And then finally, I do have one item to discuss briefly tonight. This kind of came up today, a little bit later in the morning. Bradford Industries, the board may recall that there was a project before you at 1881 Middlesex Street. It was, I think, Drake's Landing was the title of the project. And clearly that hasn't gone forward. It has kind of stalled, and I think they're having trouble financing it, the original developers. Bradford Industries currently owns that site, and they met with us today, that Richard Stanton, I think his name was. And they're, just to kind of give you some background, they're, with it, a lot of other people having difficulties through this kind of economic conflagration that we've got going on here. And they've got a couple strategies to get them financing to get through to about the September, October, November timeframe, where they believe they're going to build enough business. But one of their strategies is to get this parcel sold at 1881, and I think it's 1827, or excuse me, 1939. I'm going to hand out it's a small plan, and basically what we're looking at is amendment to the site plan. They originally proposed, as you remember, tearing down a house and building an access drive there. They're now proposing, I'll just pass this as I describe this.
That was across the street from the dead-end street there, yep.
Yes.
It was the one-way street, and then, no, not dead, I'm sorry, one-way, I meant to say.
Yeah. What they're proposing on the western end of the site, and it's kind of hard because this is it's very early in the planning phase, but it's a small plan. They will be proposing, or looking to propose, a new access point across from Nelson Street. And they currently own what is essentially a 15-foot right-of-way. And they're working with Becknell, which is I think it's either an apartment or condo building that you see in the front of this plan. Looks kind of like a checkerboard. They're looking to either acquire or get an easement. I think they're going to acquire a strip of land that will give them about a 32-foot right-of-way, 25-foot drive lane, which was what was originally approved in terms of width at 1881, to provide access to the site, and then rebuild a parking area for Bicknell. Right now, residents park along that right-of-way. They're actually parking on that right-of-way, so it's kind of closed off at this point. What they will do is, for the time being at least, is not use 1881 as access. They won't tear that down at this point. This entry point will become the primary access. Then they will retain the emergency access on the eastern end of the site. My understanding, as it was described to me today, is that they're not planning to change the program or increase the intensity of units. They're planning to, if anything, it'll be a less number of units proposed, but it won't be over the 125 that was originally proposed. They are, I believe, in talks with the university to do student housing there, and I believe it would be something between 150 and 170 beds, which would work out to, I don't know, 2 beds per unit. It's just a guesstimate. So what we wanted to do tonight was, the gentleman from Bradford, as you may be well aware, is kind of very interested in getting this thing sold to get some capital. And he just wanted to get a sense of whether or not this would be, what the process is, and obviously they need to get an amendment to the approved site plan, but whether or not this is a substantial material change or if this could be approved under, I know it's difficult with this much information, but what their process would be so they could start working on that. There is an interested party. It's Beal Company out of Hingham, Massachusetts. This is their first time working in the city of Lowell. I met with them about a month ago, and they threw out some ideas, and this was before they had an idea of moving the access point. They found out about the right-of-way at a later date, but they seem to have a lot of experience in doing these kinds of projects. But from my understanding, if they can work out a different access point, particularly here, I think they're willing to move forward. Apparently, they have financing to make it work, so it could move the project forward. The big issue with the access at 1881, tearing down the building, is not the cost of tearing down the building so much as apparently there is a small wetland area right there at the end, and it was a wetland crossing. And that added enough of a cost, development cost, that it pretty much kills the project. And that's one of the reasons that we're not seeing it go forward. So this makes it doable. And it also frees up some space in the future. There's an upland area on the eastern side that was being used as detention, that wouldn't have to be used for that, because they could retain the wetland as it is, and that could probably be used as some of the retention. So I think that's mostly what I know, but I'll let you ask me questions. I can see if I can remember this discussion a little bit from today.
What they're asking you is whether, based upon the limited information we have here, whether we would think it would be some sort of a minor change that we could approve, or whether they would need to refile for a new public hearing.
Correct. At least go through the legal notice. I don't know if it's a substantial change, if they could just come in and do the notice and then come under, just through an amendment scenario.
Yeah, I would think that it's enough of a change that would want to renotice it to the neighbors, because just the change of the access point is going to impact a new set of abutters. So we're now talking about what I feel would be a substantial change, and we'd want the neighbors to be able to come in and give their point of view on the proposed change. So I would suggest at a minimum, even if it's not a total refiling, that we'd renotice it to the abutters, so that they would have an opportunity to come in and say their piece about the modified plan.
I agree with Joe on that. Did you say that they were downsizing the number of units, Aaron?
I don't
A lesser
have...
number?
Sorry.
Is that what you said?
I'm sorry, Richard, I didn't mean to cut you off. From the discussion, it sounded like it would at least be no larger in intensity of a development, and possibly a decrease in number of units. So they wouldn't propose anything that's more intense at this point. There was talk of down the road looking at a medical office because of saving the upland area, but if they were to do that, they would refile as a separate site plan. And what they would propose under an amendment process would be just a residential project, whether it's through the university or an apartment. My understanding is if it didn't work out with the university for whatever reason, that they would pursue it as an apartment complex.
Yep,
It's
sorry.
very congested up there, so I, again, reaffirm what Joe said,
I mean,
that it
and
really should come back.
this was a matter that came before us probably about 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
This ended
It's
up,
history.
ended up in litigation, and I held it up because I was the one who voted against the special permit because they had, for the driveway. They were putting the driveway in, going over those wetlands, and the question was there, the site plan carried, we only had 4 board members at the time, and then later, I believe that's when you came on and Mr. Genman came on,
Yeah.
and Mr. Genman and I still voted against it, 'cause a lot of the neighbors were concerned about it. I know all the abutters, and some of the neighbors were for it, some of the condominium association to the right, I believe. They had a document, they were for it, but part of my concern was the fact of giving the special permit due to the fact of the length of the driveway, and the sticky issue there was what had to be approved by the fire department, the police department. And I went on and said, well, emergency services, and so that's when Attorney Flood came in and had the letter from the fire department, police department, and even the ambulance services. And then we had discussion with council. We went to executive session. We came out of executive session, came back in here and spoke about it, and then we didn't want to change or make any consideration without notifying the public. We brought the public back and upon recommendation of the city solicitor's office, that they didn't feel we would win on the merits of the case, I changed my view of the case, knowing that the city solicitor said, after being in court, they didn't think we were gonna win the matter. And as a result of the advice of counsel, then we changed the matter. And I think a lot of it is by way of, as Joe says, by moving the entranceway, it will affect other abutters. And I know because the people who lived on that street, they were buying that house, one other person, as a result of this going in, was selling anyways, because they were concerned about it. Was the street across from there, was it Dingwell Street? where the
This
stop
was,
sign
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right across from
Yep.
That's the neighbor, yeah, 'cause
That
I'm
one
going up
way.
there and speaking with some of the
Yeah.
neighbors. And like I say, some were for it, but there was a good amount of people who were against it. And I think by changing it, it will affect other people.
Sure.
And I know the issues came up, not just on this site, but the issue came up about the site up further by the Chelmsford line that was approved, the part of the temporary work bridge and the construction there and all the traffic. And that was one of the big issues. But we had a letter from the traffic engineer that this wouldn't impact it well. And I remember specifically that the people in regards to the traffic said they were gonna stay and work with the city on changing those lights and trying to make that congestion less. And that's something they're gonna work with the city for a year to come. But I think, as Joe said, I think it could be a minor change, but I think by changing it over, and we did notify the neighbors last time. I know Mr. Gemman was very concerned about it as well, that, you know, and after we spoke, all the board members are concerned that I don't think we should just go back and change something without notifying the neighbors, because the neighbors were always here. I mean, so we felt we don't want to make a change until we do it on public, bring the neighbors back, and then explain our reasoning. Whether they agreed with our reasoning, whether it's individual decision, some of them didn't understand, but I know one of my concerns was the fact of the access to the site, because behind there you have railroad tracks, then you have the river, and basically getting in was that long special permit driveway over those wetlands, and the question I concerned with vehicles trying to pass each other. And then by way of compromise, when they came back, then we had council go on record where the extra parking to the far right, they gave us an agreement where any of those cars, because every time you go up there, the cars are parked there, and there's signs there. And I went up there, there was box cars there, there was wreckers with cars parked on it, and we have an agreement that anybody can call when they would tow those cars. Because of the fact, what the concern was, if any cars broke down and there was an emergency situation getting in, and they couldn't get out the emergency thing, the people back there had nowhere to go. So after fine-tuning the plan, and Attorney Flood making more concessions to the emergency parking, get it out, those were concessions that I think made myself feel a little more comfortable, and as a result, we end up approving it. So I do believe with Joe that I think if we're gonna change something, the neighbors who were along the whole time should have knowledge of what the plan may be changing. Some of the people who maybe live directly across from Dingwell might feel happy, people who live by the, across from Nelson might not. So at least, I think they should be aware of what's going on. And we could bring it in as a minor change, see if they request a minor change, but I think the notification should still be. And then we'll make the determination whether it's minor change, but at least put these people on notice, I think would be appropriate.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chairman, I agree with that. I agree with what everybody has said here. I think I think in this case, matter of fact, you pointed out, and I had forgotten, after we came out of executive session, we didn't want to take a vote that night because it wouldn't appear very good to the neighbors. They weren't here, and asked them to post it and have the neighbors come back before we took the vote. So I think that would be appropriate. If I may, though, I just, concerned once again, and I had made a motion regarding, I heard student housing as a possibility. I guess a question to Aaron is, did anything come out of that motion? And I'd like to pursue that. And also, is if any developer goes to the planning department, what are we doing relative to, the worst thing that can happen, in my opinion, and in none of the planning documents that the city has, we promoting, matter of fact, the whole idea of having concentrated dorm housing is so that you can control it a little bit more, take it out of the neighborhoods, and this is really, it's not connected to the university in any way. It's down into the neighborhood, and It doesn't fit any planning documents. I mean, we talked about a session that's taking place at the high school, and it's a planning document, and it's a vision session, and we spent a lot of time on that, and I've got real concern, and, you know, it's the economic times we're in. Who has the deepest pockets? Let's get into a contract with the university so we get state funds coming in so that we can fund this and do it. But sometimes we make decisions like that in the short run because of the situation we're in, but then we end up creating things that, you know, we wish we didn't have. And I have a real issue with that, but that's beyond the point. You know, I guess it's twofold, is, you know, what's become of that motion, and personally, what do I need to do then to make it something come of that? I know there's been some talk with the hotel and the university getting involved with that, and that's great. That actually fits the planning document in the city of Lowell. But as it relates to the effects of the neighborhoods, and as developers are trying to do things with sites, you know, that's obviously an attractive option. So I'll start with that.
Yes. George Paroikis and I have met a couple times on a way of looking at the ordinance and how it is impacted by dormitory use, particularly this kind of new situation that we're running into where a lot of developments are kind of being switched to dormitories. We're kind of at an information gathering stage at this point. One of those pieces of information that I'm trying to, particularly me, that I'm trying to pull out of that is, if a project goes through, and it has less to do with where it's permitted, more about programming and how it's developed. I'm looking at different examples of privately developed dormitories that aren't associated with a university, and how they're being addressed. And I'm pulling, just for information, we haven't really gone in a direction with that yet. And then what requirements have been in touch with the university? What is their program for dormitories? What are their standards that they look for in terms of student oversight, set of rules, and just spatial layout of the building? You know, does each floor have a public space for them? So we're just trying to get a sense of what is the best management practice for a dormitory from a university's perspective, and then if we're going to allow privately developed dormitories that aren't connected directly to the university, what set of standards need to be connected to those? We haven't gotten very far in that because, frankly, haven't gotten anything from the university yet.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, that's, and does the planning department, if somebody comes in and says, you know, well, we're thinking that is a possibility, again, does anybody even point to this and say, you know, it's really not,
Oh, yeah.
you know, that's not the vision of the city of Lowell, is to create high-density student housing in the neighborhoods. That was never the intention of that.
This project is the first one that I've seen that is so far out.
Right.
We haven't been to the point where we've actually had an official discussion of what the program is.
Right.
The question that I was being asked today was more about access.
And I understand that, and I think, but
right.
when I heard student housing,
Yeah,
that just...
Right, no, I understand. But to answer your question, when we were to sit down with the developer, and if they were to present their project as student housing at this point, we would certainly point to the master plan and say that's not exactly gelling with the idea of something near at least one of the campuses or downtown.
Right.
The whole issue with the hotel is kind of outside of what I'm dealing with. I haven't had any
Right.
talks on that. But as far as a project at this location, it's something that we certainly wouldn't advocate for. I think what that comes down to is, as you said, the economic condition we're in is a lot of people are drawing at straws. And right now, we have a university in the city who's pretty much committed to adding a certain X number of beds by X date, and they've given themselves a pretty expedited timeline that you're going to get things like this popping up.
I would suspect there's several potential developers out there that are running numbers and seeing what they can do, and everybody's at a race to try to get it out there, and that's fine, but, you know, we actually do have a vision as to how we want to see that happen,
Right.
and to deviate from that,
Right.
in the interest of what's expedient, given the current economic times, just to have something happen, I think in the long run is to the detriment of the city of Lowell. That's just my
Yeah,
personal
absolutely.
opinion.
In the part that I've done in terms of information gathering on the program, is kind of my half of it. I think George is probably looking more closely at, do we need to recalibrate where it's allowed?
Right.
Dormitory uses, and of course I didn't bring my zoning code today, but dormitory uses, have to be directly associated with.
As currently written, right,
As
exactly.
currently written, it has
Right,
to be
right.
directly associated with the institution that they're
Yeah.
serving,
Right.
which, whether through it's in a lease agreement or whatever. So really, I think that's gonna slow down the onslaught at this point of privately developed student housing, because they have to meet a certain standard that the university has. And I by no means mean to speak for the university, but I suspect they have some sort of location requirement that it is somewhat, although they're shipping them from Nashville, but I think that's more of a short-term fix.
Right, right.
But I think they would have a location standard that they're trying to meet, and whether or not this fits that, I don't know.
Right.
But that's a protection we have right now. If we're looking at doing student housing that's privately developed, that doesn't have a direct association with the university, I think what we're trying to do is deal with the situation where someone builds something under a residential apartment use and rents it out to students. Where in that case, we don't have any control. If we're to look at an idea where a private developer is developing without connection to the institution, we would like to have a little bit more control of the program, so that they can build something. And if they have a choice to build student housing, it's not a residential apartment building marketed to students without any kind of oversight. It's an option between that and a dormitory use where there's a set of standards, where perhaps there would be an allowance for additional student beds, so you would have a potentially higher density use. Now, where that goes, we're not that far.
Right,
But
right.
with the whole idea that, I guess, the short answer to that is that when we get projects that are being proposed as residential apartments, when they're really not, that we have some better control over that, and that there's a set of standards that is codified for developers to work with. So that's the intent of that portion.
Okay. All right, again, you piqued me as soon as, tweaked me when you said that and got my attention. But again, relative to this, Mr. Chairman, I agree with all the comments of my colleagues. I think it certainly would constitute enough of a change that would have to come before us and subject to public notification.
I mean, they can come in with the notice and then decide whether we think it's enough to put out the public hearing or not. At least notify them that we're putting it in for, whether it's material change or not.
Right, right.
And then that, once we see the bigger plan, make a determination on that.
I think perhaps, as a suggestion, maybe to save time, it may be better just to put it out as a public hearing. If we're gonna provide notice
Just as easy.
to the abutters
Okay.
and promote it that
So we
way.
can put it out as a public hearing to see if it's a substantial material change.
Yeah, because if we were to do a notice, we would
Might
want
as well
we
do
would
the
still
notice.
want to do it under the Chapter 40A rules, even if it's providing notice
Just
to
as easy to do it that
a
way.
non-public hearing.
And I think, we want notice not to be a sticky problem that we have, why do a partial notice instead of a full notice, just as easy, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I think
have a
if we were to
defect on
do
a
a
partial,
partial
right.
notice, it would be the 300-foot. You would
Right.
want to do it
Right.
under those standards.
And then we could advertise as, whether it's a substantial material change.
And-
And then,
and-
we'll have a chance to look it over a little deeper and get more input, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be the proper way to go. And then it'll give us a chance to digest it, see the new plans, But if it, just the access, because if you feel most of the layout will be the same, because all the building was in the rear, it was just going over the wetland.
Right.
So most likely the building will be the same, still have the emergency access to the right, as you said.
Yep.
So basically, it would be, like you say, the entrance way.
I suspect the parking layout would be different. They wouldn't be using the upland on the southeastern portion of the site for retention space. That's kind of the
And
higher quality area, so they're.
The other issue that was a little concerning to me is, when they went in the other way, it was a common driveway too,
with
the other butters. They
Okay.
didn't own it outright.
Okay.
They were still talking about a common driveway. So and my concern was, you have a guy to the right, what if he has guest over? He has common rights, and some of his people park and block that. So maybe this might be better, but it was considered a common driveway with one of the abutters who had used to it.
Right. If I understand correctly, too, just to, on the new access, is that they would be buying that access. But as you can see here, though, it is shared between the Bicknell Realty Trust property.
But we can see how it's laid out, a little better as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, last time, we had the long one, went over the wetlands. Right. Because if you look in there, where those wetlands are, when that driveway went back, it sloped down pretty good, and there's a lot of, actually, when we were up there, there was several times, there was a lot of debris where that dropped off before you even hit the wetlands.
Yeah, I think they had to do substantial fill. There was
Yeah.
retaining walls.
I'm sure they would have, yeah.
My understanding
That would
from,
help clean it up a little bit, because the building itself was in poor condition. It was deteriorating, falling down. They were still working there, but I don't know if the whole building was being used, but you could tell the building had poor structural issues. And, some of the neighbors spoke in favor of it because they didn't like the big industrial trucks coming out of the residential neighborhood.
Yeah,
And some of them,
and they had.
and some of
trailers
them,
in
and
that company,
even one of the applicants said, oh, yeah, some of our trucks come out of there, and because our trucks are so big, we cause some of the traffic accidents in front of us. Wow.
from an access management standpoint, too, as far as its location with the Rourke Bridge, moving it up,
Further, right.
Middlesex Street,
Makes
Heading
more
towards the
sense.
Chenson line.
Yeah.
is a better solution
Sure.
because you have cars entering and exit at a further distance from that intersection.
Because that's how
That
stacked
is-
back the cars get at peak times, which we know.
Yeah,
And actually, they did a very good report, I'll give them credit on the traffic issue. Remember how thick that was?
yeah.
I mean, it was a thick one,
And
and,
them cars, they were gonna do something there too.
yeah, but I mean, they had a good traffic study on the issue, and that's how they said they'd work with the city on it,
Yeah,
but
that's
they
a nightmare up there.
really did a pretty good traffic study on the area.
Yeah.
And it went all the way down past the Walk Bridge as well, on the other side of Middlesex Street. And as you know, we have other development right down there by those lights, and maybe future development, other cases that we had before us too, and they kinda gave us a picture of the whole area.
Okay, yeah, right. That's, that was Millview Estates, right? Is it Millview?
Yeah,
up
that
the
was one
street?
out further, yeah.
Yep.
But this traffic study, covered this site down by the one we just had in a little while ago, that was just withdrawn last week.
Mhm.
And it had all those traffic patterns right there as well,
Yep.
by the work bridge. So we had that on file as well to refer to.
So, all right, so if I understand correctly, I will advise them to, once they have a set of plans, submit an amendment with full notification. as a
That's what we would
public-
recommend.
Just do it as a public hearing.
Right, yeah.
Just
so
to, because if they come back to give them a more full set of plans,
Mhm.
and then push it off, we have to push it off another month, so maybe just
Right.
be more
And this way,
expedited as a
you know,
public
the
hearing.
main reasoning is what we said with, we think the neighbors should be aware what's going on up there, what's been approved, and, we can get the pros and cons either way on it, to see if it's a material change. Okay. Speaking of that, under old business, the other project, a month ago, remember how we talked about the dorms, we had the whole big issue on the thing there, and then we tried to approve it, then it came in, and then that same week later, the case came down in the court, in the land court, where they agreed with the applicant to let those dorms go in. Remember, it
Oh,
was
right.
after our meeting, like, we met on Monday, in that case, it was in the paper on Thursday? Oh, okay. I did speak to Attorney Flood about that, just to give everybody up to date. There's an appeal period, they have a right to do so, before it comes back, and he says, he still thinks this is gonna be a little ways out, but once they get something more definitive, and as he explained that night, he will definitely come back to us and see which way we wanna go. And I think a lot of us are kind of relieved if we can get that bridge over those railroad tracks, get that busing and everything else, and I think most of us, if not every one of us, commented on that, because, as you say, that's the nexus that ties it into the university.
Sure.
And doesn't flood the neighborhood, so I was relieved to see it in the paper. I think that was a common goal that we're all getting at. I know by trying to, because we all tried to add conditions on that site, but we couldn't do it because it wasn't with the university that night, so every time we tried to work it, we couldn't get it in. So when I mentioned to him, when I talked to him, he said, oh, yeah, he goes, but we'll bring it back when we know things are settled, resolved. Maybe we'd see that in the next couple of months, make sure the appeal period doesn't go, if it does, he'll keep us up to date on that. If not, but if the appeal period tolls, they'll come back with the other plan for our review and bring us up to date on which way they're going to proceed. We pretty much know which way they're going to go, but, so we will see that again, hopefully in the future, so. But since we're talking about the issue of the dormitory, and on Middlesex Street, down the street, that triggered my thought to mention it now to all board members, so. Do you have any further comments, Aaron? or-
No, it should, it would be advisable to take a vote on what the substantial material change of this now, or?
Well, I don't think there's enough information. I thought they were just
we need
looking
more
for an opinion as to whether
plans.
we thought they would require a, filing for a public hearing, so I think I would just mention it that way.
Yeah.
This, I don't think there's enough for us to really vote on.
So I think basically what we could say is, you brought it to the board tonight. The board, upon consideration of the limited plan we had in front of us, it is our recommendation to them, because they can proceed any way they'd like to come in. Our recommendation to them is, we think they should post it as a public hearing for us to come in and consider whether there's substantial and material change, because we feel the neighbors have a right to be heard on it. And like I say, this project dragged on for a long period of time. It ended up in court, it came back, and we'd like to see them, whether it's material and substantial change. And therefore, we think that, that's a recommendation from them, because they can either come in that way, or they can come in whichever way they so see fit. So if they were asking us for a recommendation, you can say, after discussion with the board, they felt we should put on for public hearing and mark it up for substantial material change. And then if we feel it is, or if it's not, then we can proceed that way. And if we feel it is a substantial change, then we have to come back with the new plans and new advertisement. Because I think when it comes in, without us having the notice and the impact from the neighbors, you could have an effect on some of us to say, well, maybe it is a new change and let's put on for public hearing. So one hearing might do the same purpose as two hearings if everybody's been notified. Because then we can consider all concerns by everybody at one night instead of two. And it might be easier for the neighbors to come down once instead of twice, because they came a lot, and I give them a lot of credit for being
Yeah,
here,
there's a lot of input on it.
you know.
And even if it is a substantial change, which it probably is with a proposed change of entranceway, if they file it as an amendment to the site plan that they have now, if they file it as an amendment with public hearing, they're protected, so that'd be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we'd recommend to them. Like I say, they can come in either way they feel, and then we'll make our decision. Because I don't think it's our policy to tell them which way to come in, but they asked for consideration, we gave them consideration, that's our recommendation, and see what they do with our recommendation. Because if they come in and we say, we want more input, give us new plans, come back again, but that's up to them. But
Okay,
those are my concerns,
I think I got
Yeah,
that.
and if they have any further discussion with you, have any question, feel free to give me a call or whatever, and I'll touch base with the board members as well, But I think, we'd like to see advertised as a substantial public change, materials change, bring it in, let the neighbors be aware of it, then we can take, because it's nice to hear the comments of the neighbors, sometimes they think of things we haven't, especially when it's right in their neighborhood, like, as they said, how they're gonna affect the new abutters to that street.
And even to the,
Not the street, but I mean the ingress, yeah.
and even, Mr. Chairman, to the applicant's advantage as well, is it gives them an opportunity to hear some of the concerns, and, before they come back to us, they'll have the benefit of hearing what some of the concerns are as well, so.
Yeah. Any further comments by any other board members?
Nope.
And nothing further from Division Planning to bring us up to date?
Nothing from us?
Okay. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's made.
Second?
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
What was that piece of property zone?